A maverick of Wall Street joins me now at the New Orleans Investment Conference. He's the founder of Freedom Fest, the author of various books, including his latest, The Maxims of Wall Street. Mark Skousen, thank you so much for being with me again.
Pleasure, Daniela. It's nice to be here.
This is our yearly reunion, Mark.
I love New Orleans. It's one of my favorite towns, and of course the best restaurants in the country.
Well, I won't debate you on that, Mark.
In the United States.
In the United States,
not necessarily
right.
including Canada.
Okay. So Mark, you chaired a great panel yesterday with
a lot of fun.
Dennis Gartman, Mark Faber, Adrian Day, and Frank Holmes. You asked them a very light question: what has contributed to the demise of Western civilization? And I'd like to ask you your opinion on this. I know you're wearing a tie here with Egyptian hieroglyphics, and that's a civilization that lost its title as the superpower. So what might make the U.S. lose its role?
Well, I think that's a good question. I was actually, as the moderator, I was the bull, and they were all the bears, the doomsdayers. It was our panel that was suggesting the decline and fall of the American empire, just like the British Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, and so forth. I actually think that the jury is still out as to whether we are in decline. I think there are some indicators culturally, like children born out of wedlock, number of people who are living together and not married. We mentioned tattoos as an example of possibilities. But we did win the Olympics. The West still dominates in many ways in terms of philosophy and books and ideas and in economic growth and so forth, higher standard of living. The other rest of the world is still catching up to us. But there are some telltale signs, trouble, the huge debt problems the West is facing. So, yeah, there are some indications of a potential decline.
So Mark Faber mentioned that we often look at the GDP, but that's really not a good gauge or measure of a decline of society. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't like GDP particularly because it includes government. So maybe if we just look at the private sector, or maybe we just look at income, individual income, or maybe if we look at consumer spending patterns, those would be some indications of how well we're doing or how poorly we're doing. GDP is the single statistic that people use, but remember it's consumption plus investment plus government, and government can manipulate that number. In fact, after World War II, the private sector grew tremendously while government retreated after the war, but real GDP actually declined 17%, supposedly, in what was actually a major recovery because the government was excessive.
Mark, an aspect which was not brought up yesterday was education, however. And as a professor, what do you think of the role of education? How should the U.S. step up here? It's obviously been a focal point of Obama's campaign, how he wants to invest more in this. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I do think education is really important, but to equate education with schooling is a mistake. In other words, by education, we mean to be well-trained so that we can be productive citizens. And just because you have a lot of schooling, just because we have no child left behind, when we respond to these tests, testing is our way of measuring, is not necessarily the best measure, because business people, I talk to corporations all the time, they tell me that graduates are less qualified as ever before for jobs, the actual training on a job. They have to be trained more and more, these college graduates. So that's a sign that we're not doing a very good job. And also the fact that we're falling behind in math and science, which are two critical factors for engineering and other examples of productive work. That's not a good sign. I think Asia and other countries are doing better in that regard.
So Mark, you're obviously your forte is economics. What needs to be done, in your opinion, of whomever comes into power, Obama or Romney? What's the first thing they need to do?
Well, I do think that job creation means that we have to unburden business. And I understand that if Mitt Romney wins, the first thing he's going to do, besides making China a currency manipulator, declaring him, which I think is crazy. But he's going to tell all the federal agencies to back off of all these crazy regulations that are keeping business from hiring more workers. We need to get rid of the minimum wage law. We need to get rid of Obamacare. We need to get rid of Sarbanes-Oxley, which is really hurting the IPO market. Dodd-Frank. All of these regulations are really crippling business and keeping them from planning and hiring and expanding.
So you mentioned,
And a flat tax, by the way. I would adopt a flat tax on a corporate level, reducing our corporate level in the United States. We need to imitate Canada in many ways. Canada really has done a much better job in streamlining business, and they're doing much better than the United States from everything I can tell.
If not, do you think the U.S. risks losing its status as the reserve currency, Mark?
No, the dollar is the reserve currency. I agree with Dennis Gartman on that's going to last. As long as we're the superpower, as long as our currency is halfway decently stable, it's going to be the fallback, the reserve currency. No other currency is in position, whether it's Europe or Japan or China or even gold. They're too narrowly focused. So the dollar is really the only game in town. It's the big elephant in the room, and I don't see that disappearing anytime soon.
Okay, so we have the election around the corner. Mm-hmm. How do you think it might go, Mark? Do you think we'll have another 4 years of?
Well, if this is going to appear before the election, then let me say one thing. If it's going to appear after election,
it will appear definitely before the election.
Well, I'm predicting a Romney victory, but just barely. And let's say in the sense that we have to make a change. Otherwise, I think American people are going to wake up with a big headache, and they're going to, they're going to say to themselves, oh my gosh, we have 4 more years of this. So I am really hopeful. It looks like it's moving towards Romney way, but it's going to be very close, I think. I'm not predicting these landslides like some of these people here at this conference. American people are shifting gears, and this is a very dangerous time period, a tipping point, if you will, where the American people may become so entitlement-oriented like Europe that we're moving in the wrong direction, and there's no way of turning that around. That's my fear.
Well, this topic of entitlement has really been a central point of this entire conference.
Yeah.
So what are the dangers that lie there?
Well, the danger, I live in New York near Yonkers, and they have 4th-generation people on welfare. And so the entitlement mentality, the benefit corruption that's associated, the crony capitalism and so on, it's going to get so complex that we're entering a period of sluggishness and a decline, if not a fall, while Asia's rising, while China is rising. It could be quite possible that China will trump the United States in becoming the dominant superpower as we move into the 22nd century.
Okay, so just to sum up, you think the U.S. might risk losing its superpower status, but not the reserve currency?
Well, I think it's. We're talking another 80 or 85 years.
So neither of us will be around to know this.
That's possible. So it'll be a very gradual process. But nevertheless, China is becoming more aggressive. You'll notice militarily, economically, diplomatically, and I think that's a risk. We're being challenged now. The American superpower is being challenged for the first time. And so, yeah, I think it's a real risk.
Mark, so just overall, I have to ask you, are you still optimistic for the U.S.?
Well, I'm fully invested, which suggests optimism. I would never want to sell short America, but I do think that we do have the capability. As an economist, I've written textbooks and so on. We do know the solutions to our problems. We just hopefully will have the guts to follow through and adopt these supply-side solutions to our economic problems.
Mark Skousen, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela.
And thanks for watching our coverage from the New Orleans Investment Conference. You can email me any comments or questions at newsfeedback@kitco.com. For Kitco News, I'm Daniela Cambone.